And so Mrs. Nielsen is as gay as usual and drives a beautiful little cart and appears, if anything, happier than before she became a real widow. She has a beautiful cottage a little way up the road and entertains sumptuously on her lawn, giving the dearest little picnics and outdoor parties imaginable because her parlors are too small to admit of very extensive doing indoors. In spite of disagreeable tales to the contrary, Freddie Gebhard is not only well received in society, but is acknowledged and leader. He is likewise much sought after by mammas with marriageable daughters, and the absurd stories to the effect that he is snubbed in drawing rooms are not credited an instant by anyone who is permitted to take a glimpse into Linux society. Freddie Gebhard has a handsome little establishment just opposite his sister's. The only woman servant permitted within its walls is the deaf old housekeeper, upwards of 60 years of age, who looks after the running gear of the household. Mr. Gebhard is another cottager who likes to take his meals at the hotel because it is so much more convenient than to do so than to go to the trouble of managing a chef, a kitchen, and a staff of servants which these entail. Then, too, you are a mealer. You can drop in at almost any time to find a good table awaiting you, and while you eat at home, the chef is intolerant of delay and goes wild over the possibility of cold soup and savory messes of potash spilled by warming over. And that is why um, so many wealthy people are content to go without pigeon wing and willing to dispense with boiled goldfish, nightingale livers on brochette, stuffed venison garnished with antlers, and Lacrynia Christi punch. The happiest man in Lennox is Malroy Bey, the Turkish minister. He is almost as dark as the Jack Spades, and most and looks so much like that gentleman that you keep wondering if at some stage of its existence he has not figured upon a playing card. Mavroet is happy because he loves the ladies, and what is still better, because the ladies love him. He makes himself agreeable, says such complimentary things to in such a distinguished way, and glances so ardently and passionately out of his great black eyes that it is a matter of fact girl, indeed, whose heart is not set a fluttering by the magic of his looks. He is all the hops. He is at all of the hops, balls, parties, and receptions, and is said never to enjoy a comfortable state of happiness unless he has a petticoat in his near vicinity. Rumor has it that the handsome Mavroyani is permitted by the laws of his country to have 4 wives, and so the girls are a little bit wary of him, for no freeborn American woman is going to share the man of her choice with 3 other women if she can help it. In the floral parade, Miss Colby was accounted the prettiest girl, and the picture she made as she reclined under her umbrella of hydrangeas was one not to be forgotten. Miss Greenleaf, to whom all the foreign ministers have been quite attentive, paid a compliment to foreign powers by veiling herself as a young Egyptian of rank. A society swell was persuaded to be the running Sikh, and so the Greenleaf turnout was perhaps the most noticeable in any of the annual parade. Lennox is particularly the place for pretty widows who possess the advantage of being wealthy also. There are at least a dozen of them there whose fortunes range from $1 million upwards. One of the prettiest of these is a Mrs. Eagleston, whose house entertainments are so charmingly managed that she has won the title of being as successful a hostess as there is in Lennox. Arthur Roach, the millionaire architect, whose delight it is to design the palatial residences which are the pride of every place, having citizens wealthy enough to build them, is frequently seen by the side of the beautiful Mrs. Eggleston. And now the gossips are saying that the reported engagement of Mr. Roach to Miss Handley of Baltimore would have been more nearly in accordance with the fact if the name of Miss Handy had been substituted for that of another fair woman. Mr. Roach and Mrs. Eggleston are frequently seen walking together, and a tall, graceful couple they make. One must not forget George Broome, who's spending the entire fall at Lenox and who enjoys the distinction of possessing the largest wardrobe of any man in America. He has trousers to a number that is beyond counting, and his coats, vests, and ties are almost equally numerous. With each change of suit, there is a new walking stick taken from the depths of Mr. Broome's luggage, and each time he wears a new hat, it's been noticed that his shoes are also of a different pattern than any he had previously worn. Mr. Broome aspires to be the new Barry Wall, and when he travels, he has a van all to himself for transporting his numerous bags, valises, and trunks. In Saratoga, every other distinguished looking man one sees is pointed out as one of the Hiltons. At Lenox, he is pretty sure to be one of the Ferlinghausens. Everything is reckoned at such high figures that one is quite disappointed to learn that the Ferlinghausen have rented their cottage for the season for the small sum of $7,500, and that they are living in one which they hired for only $2,000. Mrs. Sloane's house, Mrs. Sloane was a Vanderbilt, you know, cost about $2 million, and the grounds around it, and the Westinghouse mansion and the grounds cost half as much again. Mrs. Jessop's barn is as pretty as any country villa, and Mr. Sloane's is as pretentious as the casino in Central Park. Mr. Westinghouse's ice house, with its picturesque Eskimo shivering on top of it, is not unlike a country church, and the cottage built for the servants are so grand that one is tempted to fall and become a farmhand. General Rathbone's place is not nearly so grand, but it is more historic. Beecher lived there and wrote in one of the windows. Pierpont Morgan and Joseph Pulitzer have both occupied the house during various summers. It's rumored that the Goulettes will soon build upon the property which they own, and upon which there is now a plan to a farm. Mr. Goulette was anxious to erect a house there 3 years ago, but Mrs. Goulette chose Newport as being more fashionable and satisfactory for the money.